This is Jim from Portage M&A Advisory, and you're listening to the Selling Successfully podcast, the show that simplifies selling your business for those thinking about moving into the next chapter of life. If you like what you hear, please follow or subscribe to find us easily and listen again. We're here when you need us. Today, we're talking about what it takes to successfully sell your business and how choosing the right advisor can make a big difference. With us, we have Len Hume, former business owner of Professional Cleaning Specialists of Niagara, or PCS Niagara, and longtime friend of the firm. Thanks for joining us, Len.
It's an absolute pleasure, Jim. Couldn't be happier.
Really glad you took the time, Len, and I think there's a lot of great information we can share to other folks thinking about selling. But to start, how's retirement treating you?
Oh my God, it's a cliche, you know, they say, I don't know, I had time to work before, and it's a bit of a truth to it, but no, retirement's been great. We closed the deal on July 5th of, a year and a half ago. My wife, her and I were equal partners, of course, in the business. We provided a full-time equivalent for 3 months just to help with the transition.
Right.
Even though we felt it was pretty organized, but at the end of September, for early part of October, we just took 6 months and laid back, got some projects done, did a little traveling, slept a lot. And,
well deserved. Sure.
My gosh, yeah. And then we woke up one morning and we'd say, oh my God, what are we going to do today? Honest. So anyways, we ended up going to an industry education equipment event down in Cincinnati and ran into the people who'd looked after our digital presence for about 8 years. And we admitted we were slightly bored, and before the weekend was over, we'd agreed to help tell their story. So we've been busy doing that part-time and just enjoying.
So Len, I'd like to talk about what selling successfully looks like. And I know you've had an adventure. We've had the opportunity to navigate this with you. And from our point of view, selling successfully goes beyond signing on the dotted line and collecting money. You know, it's about the journey you embark on. It's about, the moment someone reaches out to us, requests our assistance. It's so much more than, the money part of it or just signing a contract. So what I'd really, like to learn from you is, what were you thinking when you reached out, and high level, what did this process mean to you?
When you've spent 25 years in a business, especially in our case, when a husband and wife working together all day and living at home, everything becomes very emotional. Even just the pride you feel in your company, and if it's been successful, you're happy because you've been successful, right? And you provided employment for people and good services and so on. When you get to the point you'd say, we're ready to pass it on, you wonder, so what is success? Well, of course, success is in the end finding someone who will take it, but success was making sure that our vision was going to be carried on, if it could be. That we were going to work with somebody that would help us through that, because my God, you don't know what you don't know when you decide to do that step. And you need to find someone to help. So that was part of it. To have a successful experience, you've got to do it the right way. And we didn't know how to do it the right way.
Right. And I think most people going into this have no idea what they're going to embark upon. I think most people are familiar with the tax and accounting side of things because you work closely with an accountant. I think in your case, from my perspective at least, you guys were well prepared. You guys had a good deal team. You had a good accountant. You had a financial advisor. I think you guys were much more prepared than we typically see. And I think also you guys were very open learning about the process. But taking a step back here, there was legacy involved, right? So you were looking for a particular fit. You were looking at, having someone carry the torch and taking the company to the next level. Is that correct?
Yeah. We had about 25 years in it, and there's quite a long history to it, which I can fill you in later. But we probably had taken it as far as we could. Now, we had taken it a long way from from the single entrepreneur that I started out as. But we wanted the team that got us to where we were at. We'd always lived with, hire slow and fire fast.
Right.
So we'd developed a pretty good, solid team around us, and we really did want them to be looked after.
Right.
We wanted our clients, quite frankly, we'd spent a lot of years nurturing them. We wanted them to have a pretty seamless transition if one was going to happen.
Right.
So,
yeah, and at the end of the day, I think both you and Annette are quite involved in the Niagara community. And, business touches the lives of many people. And in your case, you're going into people's homes. You get to meet great people along the way. You work with different hotels and business owners. And there are so many relationships that you've built over the years. And I can imagine, when you pass the torch, you want someone who's going to really care for those relationships and ensure that they don't burn any bridges that you've created.
Well, yeah, and destroy some friendships that we still have and maintain with people who are clients. We were at a block party for Canada Day this weekend, and my goodness, there was a client there who had been with us for 18 or 20 years. She happened to be there, and it was like old home week. So, right. And she's still a client of the company.
Well, one of the things too, Len, that I wanted to talk about is, from a financial perspective, oftentimes folks will have worked with their financial planner or financial advisor. They have an idea of what they need. Sometimes people will call it the magic number. But in your case, you guys did work with a financial advisor. You had an idea of what you needed, from the proceeds of the business, to fund retirement. Can you talk a little bit about how you prepared for that and the work behind the scenes that was done?
Well, the roots of that go back 15 years before we met you, Jim, and we met your advisor. We learned a long time ago through two organizations that we worked with a lot, that just surround yourself with people smarter than you. And Violand Associates, who are a consulting firm to the cleaning and restoration industry. Right. We hook up and did hook up with them on a planning sessions year after year after year after year. And then Piranha Marketing taught us that, really most of the problems with our business was in our head. Not structurally, it was fine. It's just, we just weren't approaching it properly. So anyways, we spent time with these people to learn about business and to learn the metrics of business and to make sure we had that sort of information. And then we found a financial planner. We pulled one of those in. We always did use a professional accounting firm.
Right. After
Annette had done all the books and got everything ready, we always passed them on to an accounting firm, and so things were clean and we knew they were in good shape. So all the time we were prepping for the point in time of knowing that someday, every person, the biggest plan when they start a business is plan how they're going to get out of it, because you're getting out of it one way or another. Right. Right? You sell it, you pass on, and it's whatever happens to it. So, yeah, we were sort of prepared, and we did have an idea on the value of it. Right. And because of our relationship with Tony, our financial planner, we sort of knew what the kind of money we needed to have a future where we had opportunities to pick and choose what we did.
Right.
So we did have you called a magic number. We had an idea what it was worth, but until we got into it, and I never knew about what is the way you talk about when you take your balance sheet and you change it, you express it in it's part of the valuation process.
Oh, the normalization.
Normalization,
right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We'd never heard of that, and it made so much sense when we saw it. And
right.
We got together with you, liked your approach, and then so we agreed to invest in a valuation at the time. There was no long-term commitments for us,
right.
if you remember, right?
Yep.
And the number that your valuation came up with were just right in the ballpark. So that's when we signed our agreement with you, and the rest is history.
Wow. Yeah. And it's interesting, Len. We had in our previous podcast, we had a financial advisor on. And one of the pieces that we talked about in that episode was how life can be extremely stressful for individuals who don't do planning. We looked at the different items that made retirement stressful, challenging, difficult. And one of the top items is failing to plan. And one of the things that I would say that you and Annette have done really, really well is planning. When I came into your business initially, that was the first thing I noticed. You're an engineer by trade, you are organized, but you had great advisors by your side, you guys had a budget, you had planned everything out. Everything wasn't brand new to a certain extent. You had an idea of the way it needed to look, and I think it made the process that much easier.
The process was longer than we thought. I think
right.
The pandemic maybe had a bit to do with that. Although you go through a number of different folks who kick the can around a little
sure.
bit to have a look at it, and but we always felt that it was important to have a budget in place.
Right.
Even if it was a stretch budget, from a revenue standpoint. But we always knew it was good to be organized, and we always knew it was good to have some metrics, measure productivity, for instance. Like, what a unique idea.
Right.
If something should be 22% labor, for instance, then if it hits 25% in a period, you want to start looking. So anyways, we did, I guess my engineering and Annette's, she's meticulous, and she's as you know, she's enthusiastic, and
very much so.
Yeah. She just would insist that we had things covered.
Right.
And I guess you've mentioned a couple of times that it helped you folks decide that we were worth, because we were sort of maybe on the cusp of whether we were large enough to really be a saleable business,
Right.
But because we were organized and we were predictable, we could predictably make a profit each year.
Right.
You felt there was something there.
Absolutely, yeah. When we look at businesses that we want to work with, we want to make sure that we can sell them. We want to make sure that expectations are aligned in terms of value and price and deal structure. And I think the reason why, I look at the sale of your business as a success is because you were well prepared, the planning was done, you were very reasonable in your approach, and your business was really well managed, and you had metrics to show it. It wasn't just you telling us what you thought the margins were. You had hard data, you had a good marketing process. There was so much information that could be transitioned. And that kind of leads me to my last point here. And again, you guys were realistic in the transition plan. So as you know, many businesses need a transition from one owner to the next, and that piece is really critical at the end of the day. You got to find the right fit, but staying on also helps. So can you talk a little bit about you helping with transition? I know you're still an advisor, but what does that look like?
I'm going to back up 2 or 3 months, okay,
Sure.
from the actual sale. One of your associate, Thomas,
Yep.
who was just a godsend to us, as the actual sale date approached, made sure that we really knew the new owner, or the head of the corporation of the new owner.
Right.
Spent a lot of time getting us together with him, and we knew the complexity of the company, and we knew he knew nothing about our business.
Right.
That was pretty obvious right from the start. He knew how to own businesses, still does, but it was important to us because our goal was like success was.
Sure.
A new owner who would carry on the vision and make sure that the team still got looked after, and all the hard work we'd put into it. So we agreed to provide a full-time equivalent. That was part of the purchase of sale agreement,
right,
for 3 months. So between us, one or the other, we was always someone there. Sometimes both of us.
Right.
I told the new owner just before we closed the deal. He said that, but the first week of August is out because I'm going fishing for a week without my phone. So, but anyways, the transition. We knew that it would be important to help him find the rhythm of the company, the rhythm of the way we. Scheduling was done, the way questions were answered by the customer. So we were just there not to tell them that was the only way to do it, because probably there's better ways to do it than we had, but at least that they would start out the first 3 months sort of in the same way. And
right.
we, after the agreement was that after that 3 months, which was included in the deal, if they needed more time, then we struck an hourly rate, and we could come in at their reasonable request and help them out. And so I still do. I'm helping them right now. They're taking one of their a fellow that, gosh, he was with me almost 24 years.
Wow.
He was my second hire, I think. He's finding, the rigors of the physical part of the job is starting to be a little bit much. So, but he knows everything. He knows everybody. He knows every client. He knows every building we were ever in. So that's a treasure in the attic, if you like. And one of the things when we were selling, we looked for treasures in the attic to try to add into the value of the business.
Right.
But anyways, they've asked me to help him become a little bit more of a salesperson.
Right.
So he can go out and do some of the more complex sales, which I used to do. The corporate sales, I did most of them myself. We always had someone doing retail sales, like the residentials and small offices, but the larger things like whole hotels and things like that was something I did, but there's no reason he can't do it, and that we're hoping to do that. So I'm working with them as we speak on that, and we're 18 months out.
Wow, that's fantastic. So just to summarize, you had a 3-month transition plan, and then it was open-ended to a certain extent, and you have a good relationship with the existing owner. You still are in touch with the staff, and you plug yourself in, as you see fit.
Absolutely. The new owner, Enrique, lives out of town, as you know, and we were underemploying, if you like, our administrative assistant.
Right.
We'd lost track and keeping her challenged, and I think she was looking elsewhere. Well, Enrique saw the skills that this person had and made her an offer to be sort of the operations manager for the local operation. So he is up every month or as needed, and we don't chat with him every time he's here because he's busy, but on occasion we'll get together for a dinner and see how things are going and see what else he's bought and go from there.
It's very entrepreneurial.
Oh my gosh, I thought I was a serial entrepreneur because I've been in multiple businesses, restaurants and bunch of other things. He is a serial entrepreneur, and and he believes in hands-off management. Let the local people do what they do best. So
right, and I think your business was a good fit for him in that you had the infrastructure, you had really good staff, you had good relationships, you had processes, you had systems, and he saw that. And I think, like you mentioned, he enhanced some of the items, and the business continues to this day. And it's great to hear that you're still plugging in.
I'd do anything for them. He's, back as we were developing the business, we made sure we had a good CRM, so that we had history, we had data about what we had done for everybody. We can go back to 2003 and still say, your living room downstairs is probably 320 square feet, because that's what we measured at a long time ago. But we had all that information, which was helpful for him, no question. And I was able to help bring out and point him in the direction of where some of that was available.
Right.
As was the net, and the net helped a lot with the office, the flow of paper in the office. There's a lot of details. Some businesses, they might do 15 to 100 transactions a year. Maybe they're in the restoration business, or not restoration, but doing building projects or something like that. We did like 1,500 transactions a year. Wow. And just keeping the flow of it, making sure everything got paid, all that stuff. So Annette was really instrumental in that, and in the HR part of it, all the systems that have been, the hiring systems and the legal requirements and all that. So she helped that transition.
So Len, now that you're on the other side of the fence, even though you're plugging in to a certain extent, the business is sold, you're happily retired, even though you and Annette have a lot of stuff going on. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that you've learned and some of the key pieces, because there were a few interesting items that came up that are a little bit unique. And I was wondering if we could start with the deal structure and what that looked like.
Part of our planning process, our financial planner keyed us into the importance of possibly doing a corporate sale as opposed to an asset sale when and if we got to that point, and making sure that we were prepared to do that, because that allowed us to take advantage, or if we could do a corporate sale, it allows us to take advantage of the capital cost exemption, which could potentially save a ton of tax money. And you never want to not pay, but you want to avoid as long as possible paying taxes, right? So it was important in our conversations with you, our initial conversations, just wondering, is that possible?
Right.
Are those kind of sales done where you actually sell the shares of the corporation as opposed to all the assets and the customer list and so on and so forth? So that's the way we wanted it structured, if it was possible.
And you ended up saving a fair amount of tax as a result.
Yes.
At the end of the day, yeah. And I would say, Len, what was unique about that is, selling the shares versus the assets is the preferred method, as you know, from a tax perspective. But what was really unique is that you guys owned land and building. And typically with the business, you can sell the shares and that's not an issue, and you can claim the lifetime capital gains exemption. But in your case, we did some investigating collaboratively with you and your advisors about selling the shares of your holdco so that you could also get lifetime capital gains exemption from the building, which is very rare. It's somewhat unique, and happy to say we were able to navigate through that. And I think there were significant tax savings on that piece as well.
Indeed. If you remember, we started off by just maybe wanted to retain the building and land, and found that if we did that, it's changed the the corporate structure, it would no longer ever be eligible for the lifetime capital gains exemption. So it became a necessity to sell them both virtually at the same time.
Right.
And both as corporate shares. And you helped navigate through that and found out things we just didn't know, when we were able to solve each of the little problems as we got to them, as you know.
Yeah, and I think we were grateful too that the buyer was flexible. The bank that he was using was understanding. He had a good deal team too, and at the end of the day, we essentially said, listen, this is the deal structure we need. This is what's going to make it work. We sat down with him, and at the end of the day, he was able to accommodate, and it worked out for you and it worked out for him at the end of the day. Are there any other things that you learned through the process?
I think we've covered a lot of the things. In other words, of being prepared, having the information. I know it helped with the buyer in this case, that if he had a question about something, give us an hour, we could dig into our records and find the answer to it, because an inquiring buyer is curious about many things, and surprisingly. I tell you, we learned that we never would have got through it without the help of your firm and your associates. There were so many small roadblocks that looked like a roadblock, but really it just was a small detour. Let's go and solve this, and once we solve it, we can move to the next step. So I don't think we knew how complex it was going to be. And again, one of those things, you don't know what you don't know, because you'd never done it before. We just were busy doing the business.
Right.
And we were trying to do it right, but we weren't constantly thinking about how do we sell it. We just knew that eventually we would want to.
Right.
So it is complex. It was complex.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's the one thing we like to impress upon people looking to sell is, at the surface level, it doesn't sound that complicated. Oftentimes, it gets compared to real estate, but you're dealing with emotion, you're dealing with a financial plan, you're dealing with the buyer's ambitions and goals, you're dealing with the lender and tax complexities. And oftentimes, even if a buyer is identified, there's still so much more to navigate. And I think having a good deal team, being open-minded and collaborative, makes a big difference.
Well, you folks were always calm. Didn't matter what happened. And both Annette and I can get excited at times, and we try to be calm. But you just were the calming influence that just brought it home for us.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think we mentioned early on, there's a process. If we stick to the plan and we follow the process, we'll get to the finish line. And if we do it collaboratively, and if we do it with other smart people at our side, it's going to happen. We've seen it time and time again. And you guys had all the fundamentals in the business, and I think that's really what made it work at the end of the day. Before we finish up, Len, is there anything else you'd like to add or share?
Yeah, some things I've been thinking about. Number one is, for sure, make sure you align yourself with an advisory, an M&A advisory that you feel comfortable with.
Right.
Number two. Number two, have a plan for what you're going to do after the sale. Don't be left floundering as the seller. Number three is start now, if you haven't, to extricate yourself. Keep your personal business out of the corporate realm. We're still cleaning up some old email things and things like that. And finally, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you in areas where you're not as smart. You may know how to run the business, you may be a great mechanic, but there's a lot of stuff going into the business that needs smart people around. So, and finally, try to make friends with your M&A person.
All great points. We still get an opportunity to golf with you and Annette once a year, and hopefully we can keep that tradition going.
I'd like to do that. Really would.
Thank you, Len.
You're welcome, Jim. Thank you so much for guiding us through that process. It's made our life exactly what we wanted it to be.
Perfect. No, I appreciate it. And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to the Selling Successfully podcast. And thank you to our guest, Len Hume, former owner of Professional Cleaning Specialists of Niagara, or PCS Niagara. For those of you interested, we've created key takeaways that you can download and access via our podcast page. Please remember to like or subscribe to keep this podcast handy, and we'll see you next time.